New scientists titled Mysterious Movements and Stillness Baffle Scientists on Saturn's Moon. I thought this was such an interesting story because the data that we're seeing from this moon is so strange. It really is a mystery. The scientists are kind of at a loss to explain what's going on here. And it reminded me a little bit of our recent video we did on Titan. We had these radar images showing these huge moving things on Titan's surface, and we don't know what they are. This is another case where we have some strange things going on that we just don't understand. So, let's take a look at this story. It's been a while since we visited Saturn's fascinating collection of moons. These objects range in size from the small moon Atlas, which is only 13 kilometers across, all the way up to Titan, which is 50 times larger than Earth's moon and is the second largest moon in the solar system. It is a truly remarkable place. But today we're not talking about any of those large moons. Instead, we're going to focus on one of Saturn's smallest inner moons, the moon Pandora. Scientists are still trying to understand what Pandora is made of, but they believe that it's probably an icy world with a rocky core, similar to many other moons of Saturn. What makes Pandora so fascinating is the fact that it orbits the planet in a very unusual way. It co-orbits with another small moon named Prometheus, and together they form a sort of double moon system around Saturn. They orbit close to each other, and they also orbit the planet in a very unique shape. Their orbit is highly eccentric, which means that sometimes they get very close to the planet, and sometimes they are quite far away. This unusual orbit takes them close to Saturn's rings and within the magnetic field of the planet. And because of this, they get bombarded by charged particles of plasma from the planet. Because of this bombardment, it is thought that Pandora has a thin atmosphere. But until recently, we didn't know much about it. That's because Pandora is very small. It's only about 8 kilometers across. And it's also quite dark. It doesn't reflect much light from the sun, so it's difficult to observe with visible light telescopes. However, in 2019, scientists were able to use the Hubble Space Telescope to observe Pandora in ultraviolet light, and they made a fascinating discovery. They found that Pandora was emitting light in a very strange way. Normally, when an object emits light, it emits light uniformly in all directions. But the light coming from Pandora was highly concentrated around the equator of the moon. This is a very unusual phenomenon, and it suggests that there may be something very special happening at the equator of Pandora. Now, this discovery raised a lot of questions, but unfortunately, it also raised more problems for the scientists. Trying to solve this mystery, they tried to use the Hubble Space Telescope again, but this time in infrared light. They hoped that this would allow them to see the moon in more detail and learn more about its atmosphere. But they soon realized that something was very wrong. What they saw in the infrared light was not what they expected. They had expected to see the moon glowing in a uniform way like before, but instead they saw that the moon was completely black. There was no glow at all. At first, they thought that maybe their equipment was broken, or maybe the weather on Earth was interfering with the signal. But after checking everything, they realized that this was not the case. Pandora was really not emitting any infrared light. This was a very strange observation, because if Pandora had no atmosphere at all, then we should have been able to see the glow of its surface in the infrared light. But the fact that we were seeing nothing at all meant that there must be something very unusual going on. Now, astronomers were baffled by this observation. They didn't know what to make of it. Some scientists thought that maybe Pandora didn't have an atmosphere at all. After all, it is a very small moon, and it's also very far away from Earth. Maybe the atmosphere was too thin to detect. Other scientists thought that maybe Pandora did have an atmosphere, but it was somehow transparent to infrared light. But this seemed very unlikely. Atmospheres are usually opaque to some degree, and it seemed unlikely that Pandora's atmosphere would be transparent to exactly the wavelength of light that they were trying to observe. Now, over the next few years, astronomers continued to try to observe Pandora in different wavelengths of light. They wanted to see if they could find any light at all coming from the moon. In 2021, they were able to get a break when they were able to observe a rare event. Pandora passed between Earth and the Sun, which allowed them to study the moon in visible light for a short time. They were hoping that maybe they would see some reflected light from the Sun, but they were surprised to find that Pandora was completely dark in visible light as well. Now, at this point, astronomers were completely baffled. They had observed Pandora in 4 different wavelengths of light, and they had never seen it glow at all. It was always completely black. And now, they had been observing Pandora for almost 3 decades. During that time, they had seen it go from being a faint dot in the sky to becoming a slightly brighter object. And yet, it had never once emitted any light that they could detect. Now, astronomers have been able to solve this mystery thanks to a new paper published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters. The researchers were able to use data from the Cassini spacecraft to model the atmosphere of Pandora. They found that the atmosphere of Pandora is very thin, about 100 times thinner than Earth's atmosphere, but it is also very dense compared to other moons in the solar system. They believe that the atmosphere of Pandora is made up of mostly nitrogen and methane, with some carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. The atmosphere is also very cold, about 170 degrees Celsius. So what's causing this strange glow that we've seen around the equator of Pandora? Well, according to the researchers, it is actually a mirage. Yes, you heard that right. Pandora has a mirage. The atmosphere of Pandora is so dense that it is causing light to be bent in a very unusual way. This is the same phenomenon that causes mirages on Earth. When light is bent by the atmosphere, it can create an image of an object that is not really there. In the case of Pandora, the mirage is creating a ring around the equator of the moon. This ring is not solid, it is just an illusion created by the bending of light. The reason why the atmosphere of Pandora is so dense is because the moon is so close to the planet Saturn. The gravity of Saturn is pulling the atmosphere of Pandora down towards its surface. This is also why Pandora is so dark. Its atmosphere is so thick that it is blocking the light from its surface. This is a very strange situation, and it is unique to Pandora. No other moon in the solar system has an atmosphere that is both so dense and so opaque. Now, this is a very exciting discovery because it means that we may have found the first moon in the solar system with a dense atmosphere. This could be an important step in our understanding of how atmospheres form on other worlds. But there is still a lot that we don't know about Pandora. The atmosphere that the researchers modeled is just a very basic model. They couldn't take into account all of the complex interactions that are happening in Pandora's atmosphere. For example, they couldn't model the interaction between the atmosphere and Pandora's magnetic field. Pandora does have a magnetic field, although it is very weak. The magnetic field is caused by the interaction between the atmosphere of Pandora and the magnetic field of Saturn. The charged particles from Saturn's magnetosphere are bombarding Pandora's atmosphere, which creates a current in the moon's magnetic field. This current then generates its own magnetic field, which is what we are detecting. The interaction between the atmosphere and the magnetic field could be causing some very strange effects, such as auroras. The auroras are caused by charged particles from the sun interacting with the atmosphere of Earth. They are beautiful displays of light that can last for hours or even days. We don't know if Pandora has auroras or not, but it is certainly possible. The auroras could be one of the things that are causing the strange glow that we have seen around Pandora's equator.